This is the Sony Xperia Pro-I. It's an interesting device that aims to be a camera first and a phone second. This is not the first time we've seen a concept like this. Panasonic released the Lumix DMC CM1 years ago. Kodak released the Ektra shortly after that. The Red Hydrogen 1 even had a lot of talk about its modularity in camera before its release, and more recently Leica decided to get in on the action. The latter having a lot of similarities to the Xperia Pro-I, while also being more of a statement piece. Today I'm going to talk about my experience using the Xperia Pro-I, and based on some of the reviews I've seen, it's been very different. I love it, but I hate it. Let's start with the design, which is something I absolutely love. The backside is made of frosted Gorilla Glass 6. In my use, it's done a great job at resisting fingerprints. It's also held up great to scratches. The camera bump is pretty subtle and not in your face like many of the other newer flagship devices we've seen. The frame is made of solid aluminum and has a rail type design. It feels awesome in the hand and adds that premium vibe that you get from this phone. On the top, there's a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is something we don't typically see. It supports high fidelity audio. On the left-hand side, there's a SIM card slot and micro SD card slot, which in my opinion has the best design on any phone. I love that it can be easily accessed without the need of a tool. On the very bottom of this side, there's a slot for attaching a lanyard or wrist strap, which is pretty cool. On the right-hand side, we have a volume rocker that is, in my opinion, a little bit too small. I wish it was a little bit longer to make it easier to feel when not looking, since there are several buttons on this side. Below that, we have a power button, which doubles as a fingerprint scanner. Next to that, there's a small circular button, which can be remapped within the settings to launch whatever app you like. By default, it's set to launch the Video Pro app, which I highly recommend leaving as is. Finally, there's a dedicated camera shutter button. Long pressing it will launch the Pro Camera app. I love having a dedicated camera shutter button. It makes the camera experience fun and unique, although I do wish it was slightly higher. Whenever I mount the Xperia Pro-I in different phone clips in the portrait position, the shutter button gets pressed many times. On the very bottom, we have a USB-C port, which supports 30-watt fast charging. And what's nice is that you get the charger in the box. The Xperia Pro-I also has an IP68 rating, making it dust and water resistant. This makes it fun to take in the water occasionally and get underwater pictures or video. It's a pretty versatile phone. I really like the form factor of the Xperia Pro-I. It fits in my hand well. Thanks to the candy bar design and a few software features, single hand usability is great. The fingerprint scanner works excellent, and I do like the placement of it. Some could argue that it could benefit from a secondary security feature like face scanning, but honestly, so many phones only rely on fingerprint recognition that I think it's totally fine. Also, I really do like the Xperia Pro-I has a notification LED. It's a throwback, and I love to see it. On the front of the Xperia Pro-I, we have a 6.5-inch 4K OLED display with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. Unfortunately, it's not an LTPO panel, so you won't get the battery saving benefits that come with those specific displays. However, there's also not many phones on the market that have 4K screens, so Sony tends to have a unique thing going on with their phones. With that said, having a 4K display on a smartphone is more of a gimmick. For one, most of the content that will be viewed on this phone will be in Quad HD+, since 4K app support is extremely limited. Secondly, it's just not needed on a device this small. It looks good still, don't get me wrong, but it's just not needed. The display has a 21:9 aspect ratio, which looks great when viewing movies or videos shot in this aspect ratio. However, when viewing typical 16:9 content, you'll get huge bars on the sides of the display when holding it in landscape. You can always punch in on the display when using the YouTube app to fill the screen, but you'll lose a good bit of the top and bottom of the image. Outside of that, the display is nice to look at and produces an excellent image. When using the creator mode inside of the image quality settings, you'll get a very accurate look for editing photos and videos. Additionally, you can adjust the white balance of the display for further customization. It supports HDR content, the whites are nice and bright, and the blacks are nice and inky. But it's not the brightest display. When looking at it compared to other high-end devices such as the Galaxy S21 Ultra and iPhone 13 Pro, there's a pretty big difference, which does impact visibility when outside or under bright lights. To go along with the display, we have a pair of front-facing stereo speakers. They support Dolby Atmos, which I highly recommend enabling. It does make a pretty big difference. There's also support for 360-degree spatial sound and DSEE Ultimate, which improves audio quality by upscaling compressed audio. You'll want to plug in headphones to take advantage of this, as well as make sure 360-degree spatial audio is disabled. The speakers are pretty good overall. They get loud but do lack on the low end. Here's an example of what you can expect.
I've been on the road, I've been doing shows. Now we eating steak, remember sleeping on the floor. Stealing at the gas station when the time's cold. In the kitchen, hot still trying to flip it out the stove. Rocking fake J's, praying that nobody knows. Watch them take my dog away, was way too hard to stay composed. Fight to see
There's also an additional feature that's kind of cool. It's called dynamic vibration, which simulates a set of or pair of subwoofers by using the haptic engine on the phone. Personally, I don't use it, but I can see some people really enjoying this feature. On the headphone side of things, the DAC is good and provides a great experience for streaming high quality lossless audio from platforms like Tidal, which happens to come pre-installed and with a 3-month trial. Speaking of pre-installed apps, the Xperia Pro-I comes with very little, which is something I appreciate. There are a few Sony ones, but they're more on the practical side. For instance, the Imaging Edge app for connecting your Sony camera to the phone is pre-installed. Additionally, there's the PlayStation app and an app for using the Xperia Pro-I as an external monitor. I guess really the only bloatware apps that come pre-installed on this phone are Asphalt 9, Call of Duty, and Book.com. It's almost a stock Android experience with several enhancements that really help add to the user experience. For instance, SideSense can be set up and it places a small bar on the side of the screen. Double tapping this bar pulls up a place where you can add your most used apps, access notifications, launch one-handed mode, or start multi-window. You can also launch an app in pop-up window from SideSense. There's quite a bit you can do here. Assigning gestures to SideSense allows you to do things like swiping up on the bar to quickly get into multi-window or swiping down to go into one-handed mode. Game Enhancer is another cool feature that allows you to change the performance modes while gaming, adjust focus settings, control your display output settings, take screenshots, and start the screen recorder. Of course, there's plenty of customization options built into Sony software on top of everything else. I've honestly enjoyed the software experience of this phone a lot. I just hope that Sony updates it to Android 12 soon. Moving on to performance. The Xperia Pro-I uses the Snapdragon 888 and 12GB of RAM. Benchmark-wise, the Xperia Pro-I slightly performs better than the Galaxy S21 Ultra with the same specs, and it outperforms the Pixel 6 Pro. The OnePlus 9 Pro beat it in Geekbench 5, but it was only by a small amount. As always, these are just benchmarks. Real-world performance is what's important, and the Xperia Pro-I performs excellent. Everything from multitasking and running apps in multi-window was very nice. Gaming is also great. I never ran into any stutters, including when gaming and screen recording. Additionally, I was able to bounce between different games with ease without the app closing or losing my place, which is saying something about RAM management. The Xperia Pro-I has pretty good battery life. I averaged around 6 hours of screen on time each day when using the full 120Hz of the display. Standby wise, it's pretty good. I've been able to get a few days when using the phone on an average of like 2 hours a day. Of course, you can extend the battery life with regular use when using the battery saving features like stamina mode. For charging, it goes up to 30 watts and delivers a 50% charge in 30 minutes. It takes roughly an hour and 45 minutes for a full charge, which is quite a bit slower than the Galaxy S21 Ultra, OnePlus 9 Pro, and the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But it is slightly faster than the Pixel 6 Pro. It also does not support wireless charging. I personally don't think this is a big deal, but I do have friends who absolutely love wireless charging, so I can understand why this would be a deal breaker for some, especially given the price of this phone. Okay, so let's talk about the cameras, since I'm sure that's what most people want to know when it comes to this device. On the back side, there's a triple camera array. It consists of a 12 megapixel main sensor, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Additionally, there's a 0.3 megapixel time-of-flight 3D depth camera back here. The Xperia Pro-I uses a modified RX100 sensor, which is 1 inch in size. However, the RX100 is using the full 20 megapixels of the sensor, whereas the Xperia Pro-I only utilizes 12. Theoretically, that means the Pro-I is not using a 1-inch sensor. If Sony was using binning to capture the full sensor readout and then compress the image to 12 megapixels, that would be an entirely different story. Instead, they are cropping in on the sensor, so the talk circulating the 1-inch size is mostly marketing hype. From what I understand, the sensor is roughly the same size as the Pixel 6 Pro after everything is said and done. That said, it does come with a lot of benefits that we typically only see on dedicated cameras, such as real-time eye and face tracking for humans and animals, plus real-time object tracking by simply tapping the screen. I love both of these features. It's really awesome that they're on a phone. Okay, so to take photos, you'll need to use the Photo Pro app. Quality-wise, you get what you put in. If you're used to just pulling out your phone, snapping a photo, and that photo looking great, you're going to be disappointed. The Xperia Pro-I doesn't benefit from computational photography that we see on phones like the Pixel, iPhone, and Galaxy devices. It also does not benefit from stacked or multi-frame HDR processing outside of the typical HDR settings found on Sony's dedicated cameras. This is a phone that you'll be using in modes like shutter priority or manual. Of course, you can always enable RAW and shoot in auto and correct in post, but this will give you varying results. If you enjoy manual mode on smartphones, you'll love it, especially since the Pro-I has dual apertures at f2 and f4. This is something we saw Samsung do a while back. My problem with the Xperia Pro-I is that in order to get adequate results to what you would get on other flagship devices, you have to avoid using auto, which will cause many people to miss shots, especially if you're using this for quick family photos. The telephoto and ultra wide do an okay job at capturing photos, but again, it's nothing mind-blowing. Compared to what we're getting from other phones that are cheaper, the results are pretty disappointing. For video, things get even more confusing. You can record video inside of the Photo Pro app, but you'll need to put it in the basic mode. From there, you can only adjust the resolution and not the frame rate. In order to dial the settings such as frame rate or to manually shoot video, you'll need to use the Video Pro app. This will give you the ability to shoot 4K up to 120 frames per second, as well as the autofocus tracking capabilities. There are a lot of manual controls here for zooming, focusing, white balance, exposure, ISO, HDR, ISO limits, and much more. You can also snap photos inside of this app, but I don't recommend it. Video coming out of the Video Pro app looks pretty good, including the 4K 120 frames per second. I would say with the right settings, you can get very professional looking video without the over sharpened or over processed look that smartphones tend to give you. That said, I really don't find it that much different than shooting in ProRes on the iPhone 13 Pro, but that's just my opinion. With all that said, I would love to see focus peaking, false color, or zebras and other Pro tools to help with getting a good image baked inside of this app. You do get the ability to perform focus pulls, but unfortunately, you'll need to use the Cinema Pro app for that. This app allows you to take advantage of different Sony film emulation styles such as the Venice Color Science and acts as a video editor to piece together clips. The downside is that you can only shoot in 24 frames per second or 120 frames per second when shooting in 4K. If you switch to 2K, you can shoot in several more frame rate options. As a video editor, it's very basic. There are no color correction options, exposure tools, and is mostly used for just shortening and piecing together clips. It also shoots in the cinema aspect ratio of 21:9 versus 16:9 like the Video Pro app. Also, a big complaint that I have with all three of these apps is that they are locked in terms of their orientation. If you rotate the phone, the actual settings and stuff do not rotate. If you hold it in portrait, again, everything stays locked into one position, so there's just no rotation capabilities of these apps, and it sucks. Outside of the subpar image quality, this is my biggest complaint. Sony makes using this phone so confusing. Having 3 different apps is too much. There's zero reason why these can't all be merged into one app and then build out a separate app as a video editor. While accessing the apps can be quick when using the side keys, it's still ridiculous in my opinion. Moving on to the front-facing camera, we have an 8 megapixel camera that takes decent photos during the day, but at night it's terrible. In fact, I'm not gonna BS you, the front-facing camera overall is just bad, especially for a 2021 flagship phone. It only shoots video in 1080p, and the quality does not impress whatsoever. I'm assuming it's because Sony is betting on people using the main sensor for their video and photo needs, which is why they released the external vlogging monitor to go with this phone. The problem is, that's not included with this phone. It's an additional $200, which practically makes this phone $2,000 to get the full experience. Unfortunately, I don't have the vlogging monitor to test out. I'm sure it's really cool, but that's just a lot of money for this phone, which brings me to my final thoughts. So look, the Xperia Pro-I is a great phone in my opinion. I love the build quality, the additional buttons, easy to remove micro SD card slot, notification LED, and headphone jack are all welcomed features. The software experience is one that I love, and it reminds me of the reasons I enjoy Samsung Galaxy devices. However, for $1,800, this phone is lacking severely in the camera department. Don't be fooled by the marketing. While yes, it does pack a lot of pro features and manual controls, so do other phones like the Galaxy S21 Ultra, Vivo X70 Pro, OnePlus 9 Pro, and Xiaomi Mi devices. Even if your phone does not have manual controls, such as the iPhone for example, you could easily grab a third-party app like Filmic Pro for video, which comes with a lot more features, and ProCam for photos. The best part about these other devices is that they still have excellent computational photography skills, so taking a quick family photo in auto mode will result in a usable photo 90% of the time. Not to mention that these other phones have great front-facing cameras. If Sony truly wanted people to use the main sensor for everything, they honestly should have just skipped the front-facing camera altogether and then tossed in the monitor inside of the box. $2,000 for the full setup is just too damn expensive whether you're a pro or not. Personally, if I have to dial in settings in order to get a great image, I'm just gonna use an actual camera. For the price of this phone, you can pick up the Pixel 6 and the Sony ZV-E10 with a lens, which will give you much better quality video and photos. If you like the Xperia Pro-I, cool. I can see the wow factor, but for me, I just can't recommend this phone. At least not until the price comes way down. Let me know what you think of the Xperia Pro-I. Am I wrong for not recommending this phone? Sound off down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more videos just like this, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one.